like he said, my name is Jeremy Wiles, and I want to talk about the importance of community building. So I landed in Copenhagen. I was starving, had nothing to eat. My first day there, it was about 8 o'clock. Everything's still not in English, and I decided to go to the grocery store, which most stuff is not in English as well. So I look for the thing that looks the most familiar, and I get some potatoes. I'm picking up a potato, and a woman walks up to me. She's about 50 years old, and she looks at me, and inquisitive face, and she gets her finger and says, and grabs my skin. She says, "You look like my son." I come to find out this woman does not speak a lick of English. So our dialogue was very visual, if anything. And I said, "Thank you," because I guess, I mean, her son must be handsome, right? You know? But it dawned to me, she had a similar skin tone as I did. But when I asked her, "Where are you from?" because I was very curious, she said, "I'm from Peru." And I said, wow, there's a Peruvian lady in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I remind her of her son. Look at that. So community building. I start off with that story for a particular reason, and it's very simple. People feel comfortable with people who look like them, naturally. She felt a comfort to walk through the grocery store, point to my skin and say, "You remind me of home, you remind me of Peru." And this is Copenhagen, Denmark, a very homogenous country. But with that said, there's something to be said about when you can feel comfortable in a place where people don't look like you, don't believe in the things you believe in necessarily, or just have different cultures. And so that's why community building is a social responsibility. And I'll dive into it some more. So I got my potatoes, right? Made French fries, and I thought that was such a weird thing though. I remember it to this day, and it was a very, very momentous thing, but it made me wonder, how did my identity interact with Copenhagen? So just a little bit about Copenhagen. Happiest place in the world, 2 years in a row. I mean, I didn't get a chance to vote, but why that is, honestly, it's a very, very beautiful place, but it's not perfect. There's a very key connection between, let's say, race, class, and overall cultural relations in Copenhagen compared to the US. I see so many parallels, it's crazy, but that's one of the things that I took from it ultimately. No matter where you go, people are people, and there's parallels to be seen and that we can use to grow from. So Copenhagen is not perfect, and it is homogenous, homogeneously white. And so me being a black African-American male in Copenhagen in a homogeneously white place, I mean, to me it was like, all right, let's go, let's find something new. And I say it's not perfect because just like America, they're also getting used to this thing called immigrants. People that are not from Copenhagen, or first generation, second generation, people who now are from Copenhagen. And just like America, there's this xenophobic, kind of scared of the new thing, feel that people are going through, and it's a beautiful thing because, I mean, it's a lot to grow from. And becoming diverse, like I said, there are a lot of, there's a huge influx in the last 20 years of Africans, Middle Eastern people, and a lot of people from, let's see, Eastern Europe. You have your Turks and of the sorts. And homogeneously small Denmark, Copenhagen, they're getting used to this. And just like as much, I'm from California, so just as much as California is getting used to the Latino community, who's going to be the majority in years to come, Copenhagen is getting used to this minority growing in number and coloring its city. But that's also a beautiful thing as well. And I just had to put a picture, hello bikes. Copenhagen is blessed with infrastructure that has made it so easy to ride a bike. I didn't have one personally, but when I got a chance, I rode one all the time. And honestly, I look at this and I think how beautiful Copenhagen is. But I also have low expectations, just like regular Danes too. I'll explain. Diversity. So I asked myself, what does diversity mean to me? And I want you to ask yourself when I go through this presentation, what does diversity mean to you? When I think diversity, I think differences and similarities. And I think there's a beauty in learning about perspectives that aren't like yours. And so I work with the Diversity Council in my school, Grinnell College, who we want to constantly engage our community about how we think about perspectives. But when I went to Copenhagen, I got the chance to worked with a club called the DIS Diversity Club that also gave me a chance to dive into what diversity meant in Copenhagen. It is a phenomenon. As you other people who went to other places, diversity means something different. And I mean, no matter where you went, I had a chance to go to Paris. Diversity in Paris is light years different than diversity in Copenhagen. And that's a growing experience. So lifelong idea, think about how diversity interacts with the environment. It will give you so much perspective on who you are and who you are within a culture. And that's something I want people to take away from this. And I love fortune cookies because, I don't know, I like uncertainty. And there's nothing like the uncertainty of what can be in a fortune cookie, good or bad, but it's always good. And it says, the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. And when I think of diversity, I think of this, the idea of triumphing over being different. We're people, and I'm an economist, so I know people don't like uncertainty. They don't. They can clear it. Any information they can get, they will. But there's something to be learned from overcoming adversity and things that are different, conflict, because differences tend to cause conflict. But going past that is a beautiful thing. So keep in mind that diversity is a good thing. Differences are never good or bad inherently. Somebody said it earlier. They're just different. And that's honestly the way to look at life. And so, like I said, community building is a social responsibility. Why? Because we all have an inherent stake at each other's safety, whether that's intellectual safety or it's physical safety. I want you to look at this picture. This is Cultivating. Beautiful. To me, I live about right here. This is called an interactive park. A couple years back, Copenhagen looked at America and they were worried that they're going to be as large and unhealthy as we are. So they started planning against that. They decided to make parts of the landscape interactive, so it promoted health and it promoted fitness. These are bike lanes, these are courts. This is actually a cafe / warehouse where kids can go and play sports and different activities. But who lives in these neighborhoods? You have white Danes, you have African Danes, and you also have immigrants, a lot of immigrants. And you can characterize the whole idea that there's a lot of immigrants, but you can't quite see it, but there's satellites, dishes like on the edges, like little white specks. And what is that to say is that they were wondering, how do you bring two communities together? You have this Muslim population that has their own set of cultures, and you have this Danish populations with years of having a set homogenous culture. The way they decided to interact Copenhagen with the immigrant population and the first generation and second generation population was to explicitly make beautiful landscapes that made people feel a lot better about where they lived. Before this was red, before this was actually created, it was grass. Can you imagine this with nothing in between but grass? No trees, nothing, just grass. A lot of white Danes did not want to live there because it wasn't attractive. It did not serve them as a fruitful community. It was a place where they sent people who were immigrants, honestly. And the funny thing about it, they actually call these places ghettos. And it was a response to what America calls their ghettos. To this day, a fun fact is they still call it a ghetto. But I mean, that's maintained a lot more than what I would, or what you would call a place that was urbanly messed up or a ghetto. And it just goes to serves to show that if you truly want to address problems with integrating people, you have to look at the triple bottom line, and it's economic or financial, if it's environmentally feasible, and the social climate. I say this because when you design something and when you live with someone, if you design it for them, then it's not for them, it's for you. When they designed Copenhagen to look like this, they did three things. They were transparent, they had a call for what they wanted to do. They made sure it was accessible. This is an open community area. It's not limited to anybody. Literally, the buses run through it and everybody walks through it often. But honestly, the best and most important thing, they co-designed it. They asked the Muslim population, the immigrant population, what colors, how do you want, what do you want in your community that represents you? And that's something that I truly feel that we can implement in the United States and across the world, wherever we go, to make our interaction with the other, with our neighbor, more fruitful. It's the idea that we all live in this world together, and unless we co-design it how we want it to be, with each other, then we will continue to live separately. Co-design means together, and that's something I learned when I went to Copenhagen. Another example I just want to leave you with is, when you live in a place you're not afraid to call your home, when you actually have pride in how it looks, there's a certain level of pride and confidence environment and aesthetically pleasing environment has on somebody's soul, somebody's outward confidence, and somebody's performance when they go to work. There's no doubt in my mind that the Muslim population and immigrant population will thrive in Copenhagen, but unless things like this happen in the United States, I fear that we will continue to treat them like second-class citizens. And that's what I learned the most, is that people are just people. We come and we go, and we're from different places. And one thing we need to remember is we need to co-design this world together, and that's what Copenhagen taught me.